Hello and welcome again to All Systems Go with me, Rory McCallion. I'm talking today to Willian Santos of ABI Electronics, which is headquartered in England but has contracts and customers all over the world. The interest of it is the fact that it is engaged in recovery, repair and reuse of electronic equipment, and in so doing extending the life of IT equipment greatly. Now that's something that we tend to think of as being on the mechanical side, making machinery last longer by monitoring its condition. Essentially the same thing can be done with IT equipment, and it is becoming more pressing that it should be so because of the pressure on the environment of the equipment that is being thrown away. 60 million tons each year of things like printed circuit boards and other IT equipment is disposed of, and it often ends up in the third world where it is a nuisance and it is toxic and they haven't got the equipment or the wherewithal to dispose of it. It's wasteful in both senses of the term, both in terms of building rubbish heaps or trash heaps, but also in terms of money. Willian says that repairing and reusing equipment costs less than 10% the cost of buying new. So even the most antediluvian or reactionary commercial director or finance director has got to be prepared to pay attention to those sort of numbers. As we are faced with greater pressure from regulation for recycling, and as we seek to make our equipment and machinery as effective as possible for as long as possible, we cannot afford to overlook the opportunity to extend a life in a professional way and in a way that actually ensures performance at the standard of new for a longer period of time. So pay attention to what Willian has to say. It's interesting and I think quite enlightening as well. Hi, Willian Santos, Head of Sales and Marketing at ABI Electronics. Welcome to All Systems Go. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. First of all, could you give us a quick explanation of what ABI Electronics is and what you do?
Good afternoon, Rory. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here. ABI Electronics, we design and manufacture specialist systems using the maintenance and the repair of critical electronic systems. So systems used in aerospace, energy, automotive manufacturing, oil and gas, military defense, obviously as well. So our systems are used by customers all over the world, and they use our products to extend the life of those critical systems. And we've been in the market since 1983.
Okay, right, so that's quite a while. So that fits into the idea of circular manufacturing and sustainability. But how big is the market for repair rather than replace, especially of critical electronic items?
Well, the market is huge and it continues to grow, and it has been growing at a very surprising pace over the last maybe 5 to 8 years, considering everything that is happening in the world and all these things that happened in the last decade and the last decade as well, with the credit crunch and companies becoming a bit more aware at the same time of the environment, and then more recently with the pandemic. So companies businesses, government organizations, they're really revisiting repair and maintenance, and instead of just either number one subcontracting it out or just investing in buying stock and increasing stock availability of parts, they're looking really into finding ways and developing the internal capabilities to do the repair and maintenance themselves, and taking matters in their own hands, becoming masters of the destiny, let's say.
Okay, so you're selling boxes like the piece of equipment behind you there, so that people can do their own repair and maintenance rather than sending it back to you and you doing it.
Absolutely, yeah, that's correct. This is called the BoardMaster. So the BoardMaster offers over 25 different tests that allows technicians and engineers to troubleshoot electronic circuit boards, and I've got one here in case people are not familiar with circuit boards. So electronic circuit board like this, designed to last many years, But some of these components here, they degrade, they get tired, they fail. So our systems basically allows technicians and engineers to know exactly if this PCB is not faulty, what's wrong with it, and what is the fault or faulty component. And they can replace the component very quickly, very easily, like for like, and they could save potentially, tens of thousands of dollars, or even, $100,000, which is the case in aviation, for instance.
Right. So that's quite a lot of money. And you have mentioned aerospace and military. So are they your prime customers? Is it primarily military? Is it primarily aviation, or is it are there civil customers involved as well?
Well, it's both. Historically, ABI has been working, for instance, with the British MOD for many years, and obviously our relationship with the likes of RAF helped us develop our products as well, because not only we provide the hardware, provide the software as well, all the tools and training, and all of that evolved from that relationship that we established with the UK Ministry of Defense and all the different branches. But obviously, because our systems are universal, they can be used to repair virtually any type of electronic circuit board, mostly industrial circuit boards. Okay. So not only we have a very good relationship with the military, with foreign forces all over the world, but we also work with aerospace, but we work with manufacturing. We work with companies like Lego in Mexico, and they use our system to troubleshoot and repair, for instance, electronic circuit boards that power up the plastic injection machines. So they have 700 plastic injection machines, making all the bricks, Lego bricks. And obviously, if a machine, stops producing, downtime, penalizes manufacturing companies greatly. And the process before was to send all the boards back to the manufacturer who was in Denmark or in Germany or in France. By investing in our system, by, obviously training their technicians, they have now basically brought the troubleshooting, the repair in-house. It saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money. We like to mention Lego because it's a great story, but just like that, we have food manufacturing companies, and then obviously car makers, so energy, renewable energy as well. So we're a very democratic type of organization. We tap into 20 different sectors of the economy.
Okay, all right. Now you mentioned the military, though, and that's one that's of particular interest. You were founded in what, 1993? Did you say? And it was
1983. Yes, sorry.
1983. Well, in the middle of the 1990s, the British military, you mentioned the RAF, the British military started adopting commercial off-the-shelf electronic equipment rather than everything being absolutely bespoke. It started buying stuff off the shelf, even using Windows operating systems for its electronic, well, a whole range of things, including warfare and battlefield surveillance and all the rest of it. Was that sort of a step change in your market? Did that give you a bit of a boost, or did it really not make that much difference? Where at the end of the day, the PCBs, printed circuit boards, they're essentially the same. Were they essentially the same, regardless of whether it was bespoke manufacturer or commercial off the shelf?
Well, I don't think that change had that much of an impact on our business per se. However, it is true that when you have, commercial products getting into defense and military, then you have a different, set of issues and struggles. One of them being the programmed obsolescence. You have those components, commercial components, even though they have been developed for commercial as well as military. In many cases, they follow, the life cycle of the commercial sector, and then they become obsolete more quickly as well. So they are more readily available. They are cheaper to acquire and to implement. But if you don't have, a plan, an obsolescence management plan, which involves developing the capabilities to look after that asset throughout the the project, and that project can always be extended. We have seen I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've seen so many projects that had best before date, 2008, and they're still going, and they've been extended until 2035.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they included commercial parts. So regardless if they are custom made for the military or if they are commercial parts, I think the main point really here is if you don't want to be exposed to the risks of obsolescence, component shortage, counterfeit components, all of that, you really need to invest in training for repair. You need to invest in the right tools to allow you to take matters in your own hands.
Okay, that is a thing. The sort of planned obsolescence. Now, we do tend to think of IT and control systems as becoming quite rapidly obsolete. I mean, there's the old thing about 18 months, the capacity doubles and the price halves, and that's of chips. So the chip capacity is increasing dramatically. How can a refurbished unit keep up to date, and how can mission critical IT be refurbished? Surely it's got to be the most advanced, the most up to date, the most ready that it can possibly be.
Well, it's a very good question. It's a very good point, and I think you need to look at the market. You need to look at all the different technologies that you have in operation. And going back to the point of obsolescence management, I think it's all about really trying to predict when that system is going to become obsolete. But then obviously, try to intervene much sooner. Okay, and this works for both the public sector as well as the private sector. You mentioned, for instance, IT and systems obviously being the latest. Well, there was this system, this mobile shelter system, worth millions of dollars in America, being operated by the Indiana National Guard, and the Army's National Guard, and that mobile shelter unit had been decommissioned, and it had been earmarked to be dismantled simply because the HVAC system, the heating, air conditioning system, etc., had been found to be faulty, and without HVAC, without heating, cooling systems, no one can obviously operate or work inside of those mobile shelters. So basically they had decommissioned, they had planned to get rid of that. And you were talking $10 million US for that unit. So in that particular base, that's Army, that National Guard base in Indiana, well, they had one of these. And they had obviously a trained technician, trained engineer. And that engineer said, you know what, let me have a go, let me try, let me see what I can do. And he ran a number of tests. He found, the faulty components, replaced that component, tested on the unit, and the unit was working again. So in a matter of hours, he sorted that problem out, a problem that the manufacturer, the original equipment manufacturer, had told them it was impossible to resolve. So there's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of ideas in our industry, unfortunately, that they don't stand the test of, us asking questions. For instance, software. A lot of companies or people believe that everything is software driven these days, and if you don't have the software of that PCB, there's nothing you can do, and then that's not true. That's absolutely not true. And obviously we have seen our customers, it's not us, it's our customers using our system, relying on our training, proving these concepts wrong time and time again.
It's interesting you should say that the that the hardware manufacturer said that it couldn't be fixed. You've got to buy a new one. I think that an awful lot of us have come across the situation where, for whatever reason, maybe a computer or a laptop or a mobile phone or a GPS, something or other, something like a GPS sat nav type thing, suddenly stops working. Sometimes after an upgrade or an upgrade to the software or a recent reprogramming of the software. And I hope I don't sound bitter at all, but it has happened to me quite recently that suddenly a GPS rangefinder that I was using doesn't work, and that was after a software upgrade. So we have come across this where equipment has actually been deliberately bricked, and I'm not saying that happened to my GPS, obviously, but equipment has been deliberately bricked so that it will not work anymore, so that you've got to actually buy a new one. How do you get, is that something that comes across often, and are you actually able to overcome that?
It really depends on how long you have been developing that internal capability that I mentioned about,
right.
in learning how your assets work.
Okay.
Something that our system does is basically it can record information from the good working sample, right? And then you can obviously see how that PCB or the components are degrading over time. So it's that level of understanding that sometimes is necessary, so that to ensure that independence, independence from external suppliers, for instance, and obviously, if it's something is over the air, if the updates, like in your case, potentially could have been done over the air, as we've seen a lot happening, it's more difficult to stop that from happening, right? But regardless, there's a lot that is blamed on software when actually it's hardware. Okay. And security issues that sometimes companies, organizations, I've seen, time and time again, just exposing themselves to risks by blindly subcontracting, the service of their PCBs. Well, who can, on the basis that, we don't have the software, therefore we can't do anything on those PCBs. But, there's nothing really stopping, third parties from implementing a rogue component, surveillance type of circuitry, and then taking hold of some of your secrets, for instance. So it has become, an issue, obviously, but we have seen, what we have obviously noticed is that the vast majority of issues that some organizations tend to blame on software are actually hardware related, and they can be easily resolved. Okay. Even a brick component, even a case of a brick, device or bricked device. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay, that's interesting. Now, what you're saying about actually monitoring your equipment or looking at one that is as standard as it should be and keeping an eye on it, it's almost like we talk a lot about, or we're talking increasingly about digital twins, where you are monitoring, or where a company like Rolls-Royce or like Tesla or a number of others are actually collecting data and monitoring the data and are creating a virtual twin of products that are actually out on the road. In a way, you can do that, or you can with yours, you can actually create something that is at the right standard, and you can then keep an eye on other things to see how they are declining and what parts are declining. But I mean, can you do that in real time, or is it you've got to take it out, plug it in, or whatever, take the machine along, take your BoardMaster along and plug it in, and then compare with the standard and see which bits aren't working? Or is it real time, or is it when it breaks down, then we fix it?
Yeah, it can be done in real time. And we have seen, for instance, our systems being plugged into environmental chambers, for instance, and then being subjected to, accelerated, stress and humidity, vibration, just to see how the circuit board will behave or react to that sort of environment. But the vast majority of our customers actually use these for checking, brand new replacement card first, and then that replacement card goes into the machine and goes into operation for 3-6 months, let's say, and then bring it back, and then they scan it again, and then obviously our software will plot all the different results and deviations within the tolerances or anything that is outside of the tolerances, and then eventually they store that information, put the PCB back into service for another 3-6 months. And then after that, they can see, how much the components have deviated from, that standard when brand new, the standard being when they were brand new. But they can plan for replacements. They can obviously acquire components and then decide on the best strategy to really, avoid having to intervene when the fault has manifested itself. The whole idea really here, the best, time-saving strategy is to try and intervene before the issue has appeared.
Okay, so a planned maintenance schedule really for your IT, for your electronic equipment. That's okay. Now, do refurbished, repaired units perform as well as brand new or state-of-the-art equipment? Is it actually at the same standard?
It can be even a higher standard. Considering it really depends on the skills of the operator. When we created in 2015 a movement called RepairDontWaste, our plan was really to draw the attention from the industry, from all these different sectors, from energy all the way to automotive, maintenance, aerospace, to the benefits of repairing instead of replacing. And obviously, we come across that argument, a repaired electronic circuit board will never be as good as new, and that is just not right. There are obviously standards that need to be followed, a set of criteria that needs to be met. But in terms of soldering, in terms of reworking, strategies, you can definitely even outperform those that have been done in the production line. I have seen PCBs coming out of, industrial equipment that were fairly new, and the standard wasn't great. The assembly process, or the standard followed by the assembly process, wasn't great, because a lot of electronics these days are rushed through, and there isn't, testing. For instance, we design and manufacture all the stuff here, all the products here. So we have our own assembly line, we have a production line here, surface mount, through hole, and everything else. Everything that we make gets tested, and gets tested automatically. And we have invested, just to have a new automatic inspection, optical automatic inspection machine to really check for every single component on the board. But a lot of companies out there just don't do that. They only test or verify or check maybe 5-10% of the work that they do, and those eventually go to market, and they break down more quickly. So in summary, obviously, a repair well carried out by a trained technician and engineer can be just as good as a circuit board that has just left the production line. Okay, so it's an analogy in the auto industry will be, say, after sales tuning of the suspension of the engine or whatever. You can actually make it perform better than the absolutely when it comes out at the end of the assembly line. May not necessarily last as long. If you make your Mini go at 130 miles an hour, then it might not actually, it might blow up at some point. But the idea is, yes, you can actually make it perform better. You can tune it more accurately for the task that you are wanting it to perform. Right, absolutely. Okay, that's fine. But the question then arises. Can I just add something very briefly here? Because one of the companies that use our products is Metro São Paulo. So Metro São Paulo is the world's third largest suburban train or transit agency, and they've been using our systems for nearly 20 years. And something that our MD here and myself, our MD Sean Hayes and myself, heard from the operations director a few years ago is that our systems have allowed them to not just repair and maintain their circuit boards. They have over 1 million circuit boards in the network, split into 12,000 different designs, and they repair everything in-house. Now, not only they can learn, they have learned more how the systems, how to repair the systems more effectively by using our systems. They have learned how the systems work, and they have learned all the weaknesses. So something that they have implemented, for instance, something is a process called robust engineering, which is in line with what you're saying. Instead of just repairing like for like, obviously with the approval and the participation of the equipment, original equipment manufacturer, they could have actually changed some specifications of some components to make it better, to make it more robust. And so some capacitors, some transistors, some discrete components, when submitted to the climate, the European climate, they obviously will have one performance. But in Brazil, when you are in the tunnel gets to above 40 or 50 degrees in the summer, then obviously the electronics will behave differently. So it's about what you're saying, it's adapting that system to their conditions and making the most out of it.
There's a couple of things that you raised there, and I'll come back to the OEM permission in a moment. But if you can actually repair, refurbish equipment so that it is at least as good and perhaps even better and more suited to the task than it was when it was originally purchased, what's the argument for buying new in future? Should you not just stick to renewing and refurbishing what you've already got? I mean, it would have the effect of taking an awful lot of stuff out of the waste stream, which would be good, but it would also strangle innovation a bit, would it not? That if you're never actually buying anything new, then the downside is that you won't necessarily get the advances or even the benefit of the advances. Is that a real dilemma, or can the two sit alongside each other?
I think they can, because I would argue that investment in new innovation shouldn't be led by the fact that what you already have keeps breaking down all the time. Right. And if that is the case, it is a sign that poor judgment has been used, and instead of designing for repair, for instance, none of that have been taken into consideration. So I think manufacturers need to have really, a good look at the mirror and say, well, we need to change things here, and we need to change how we communicate value, and not just expect that in the case of transit agencies as well, that every 3, 6, 7 years, the public administrators will come knocking on the door asking for more systems to be acquired, because those that they had in use in the fleet haven't really aged so well. Okay, so I think that's one key argument. But and if they are designing for repair, if they are building products for repair as well, they can also offer the service themselves instead of just telling the user to buy new or buy a brand new replacement, just throwing away, adding to the nearly 60 million tons of electronic waste that gets created in the world every year, adding to that problem, just throw that away, buy a brand new from me. So I think there's a case really for manufacturers to improve ways that they do things and invest in servitization, capitalize from the services that they can provide as well.
Right. Yes, it does make a strong and practical argument for servitization for an ongoing payment rather than big upfront capital payments, and which can be good for the manufacturers and producers as well. So, do you work with OEMs in order to get permission get design schedules, design information that enables you to provide the service that you are doing, or are you having to reverse engineer everything yourself?
Well, let's just be clear here. We don't reverse engineer anything ourselves. We obviously provide troubleshooting equipment, provide schematic learning systems for our customers to use to keep their assets going, to keep their infrastructure equipment going.
Mm.
Now, we do work with OEMs, with those that have understood what I've just mentioned, the value of providing services. One company in the rail sector in Germany, after watching our videos on YouTube and then noticing the company that I mentioned earlier on, Metro São Paulo, being one of our customers, when we had a meeting with them, one of the gentlemen there mentioned that, I saw, on your advertising that you work with Metro São Paulo, and then I realized why they stopped sending products here to Germany for maintenance and repair, because they are doing everything in-house.
Right.
And they obviously wanted to invest in our systems to provide the service, to offer the service to those organizations that didn't want to do the work themselves. So we work with OEMs who want to change perhaps their their brand's image, and they also want to offer the service. In many cases, projects get put to one side, or they become obsolete because acquisitions, big organizations, big OEMs, they acquire different organizations, different companies, and the team who led that project eventually, that expertise, that knowledge gets lost.
Yeah.
However, they still need to maintain and keep a range of systems working. So they invest in our systems so that they can recreate schematics, for instance, and they can offer the work themselves, and they can try and reproduce the PCBs as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yes, it can become another revenue stream for the OEMs, and it can be an effective way for the users to keep their equipment going and up to date. So, what are the financial benefits? What would you say are the financial benefits to your customers? Are you saving them money out of their capital account or their revenue account? Because sometimes, of course, the people who are involved in the revenue account don't really care what the capital account is. So how do you get it so that those silos are talking to each other, and the left hand is cooperating with the right hand, and everybody's moving along? How do you make the financial case? What is the financial case?
Well, the financial case is very simple. Repair compared to buying new, we're talking less than 10% of that cost. Okay. Right. So including labor, including parts. Not only that is the time. So sometimes it's just you may have the capital to buy new, but you don't have the time to wait for the new to arrive. Especially considering what's going on in the world today with the pandemic and chip shortage, for instance, and all the different supply chain issues. So we have been getting loads of inquiries over the last maybe 3-4 months of companies that said, look, we didn't want to repair, we wanted just to replace. However, replacements are just not available. Of live notice for a lot of systems here, so we're going to have to start repairing now. We're going to have to start and developing, those abilities to repair. So you may have the money, but you don't have the time. And then, when you invest in developing those capabilities, not only you saving 90% of the cost, but troubleshooting and repair of a electronic circuit board can be done in a matter of hours. Right. If not, in some cases, just a matter of minutes. So it's really appealing in that sense. And another important point is emissions. So when you buy new, so repair compared to buying new, you are slashing 85% of the emissions that will go into sourcing raw materials and important minerals and turning them into semiconductor components and into PCBs, and then obviously shipping all of that across the world. So repair against buying brand new, you are also reducing emissions by 85%. So I think we're seeing more and more financial directors and people who are actually controlling the money, becoming a bit more aware to the benefits of investing that repair and maintenance process.
Yes, I can see it bringing a smile to the most flinty-hearted financial director with those kind of numbers. And of course, you can also save time on installation and on training if you're continuing to use something that is already familiar, that your people quite happy with and are used to working with. So yeah, there's a significant time saving. So you've got financial savings, you've got extended life, you've got reduced wastage. So you're going to make the environmental aspect positive as well. I'm struggling to think of any downsides. Actually, there aren't. Well, you're not going to tell me of any downsides in any case, are you? But yeah, I'm thinking that it looks like a pretty good overall situation. Improved maintenance, improved schedule maintenance, improved performance, improved life cycle, less emissions, less carbon impact on the environment, and more accessible.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
Job creation. Because obviously you end up obviously recruiting more qualified technical people as well, which is a great thing.
Right.
And on those side of things, perhaps that might be a struggle. We have the same way that we heard about software being an issue. We don't have the software, we can't do anything, which is, again, we have proved that to be wrong. Mm-hmm. Is the lack of trained staff and technicians. Now, obviously, we definitely, if we as a society are to get serious about repair rather than replace, and the whole right to repair ethos, obviously, which is something that we support, we obviously need education to stand up to the challenge, and we need to have universities, we need to have colleges, BTECs and vocational schools offering training for repair. There's a lot of training being offered only for engineers. We obviously hire engineers here. We have fantastic engineers as part of our teams here in Barnsley. But we have recently finished a recruitment process, and every candidate that's come through the door, all that they knew was how to create an app for a mobile phone.
I was talking to somebody about use of artificial or augmented reality in training, and also to enable, particularly a time of skills shortage, to enable one skilled engineer to control a cohort of people who are learning or didn't necessarily have the skill level that the trained engineer would have, and enable the trained engineer to almost be on the spot by using a headset and being able to see what the person is doing in front of them. So but raising that sort of skill, or making the skills available on site, is pretty crucial. Yeah. Okay. All right, William. That's pretty good. Only one other thing to add. How do you see the market developing?
Well, considering what we have been going through as a company here over the last 3-4 years, the growth that we have experienced, the talks that we're having with organizations like Lockheed Martin and GE Renewable, Honeywell, etc. The appetite is there to continue to invest in, obviously, repair and maintenance, which is something that they admit to us that they were not considering 5 years ago. But because of everything that is happening, I think there is definitely a decisive, changing direction, which is, again, obviously, which is great. So we're definitely seeing servitization growing tremendously. Yeah, we work with one of the big 3 elevator companies in the world, and a good proportion of their revenue comes exactly from servicing elevators, lifts, but not just from their brands, from the other brands as well. Right. So I think companies, instead of just relying upon the sale of new assets, they will definitely be investing even more in services. Yeah. So and at the same time, we're seeing end users investing and trying to shield themselves, protect themselves from the risks associated with obsolescence and supply chain issues and price hikes and all of that as well. Okay, that's great. So from, you mentioned Barnsley. Barnsley, for our viewers in the United States, is a town in Yorkshire, in the north of England. That's your head office, but you've got presence all over the world, haven't you? You mentioned Indiana, you mentioned Brazil, and I think that
you've had some export success in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia as well, I think. Is that right?
Yes,
So you're
that's
all
right.
over the
That's
place.
right. We are literally all over the world. We have partners. We have a team of partners based in 60 countries around the world. We have a structure there in the US, in the Far East as well. Here in Europe. So customers obviously can rely on us. Not just that we're going to be here for the long run, but they're going to be enjoying local support as well, which is something that we take pride in offering, obviously.
Okay, so it's a global movement. The movement towards repair, maintain, reuse is a growing global movement. It's not just something that's happening in one part of the world. It's all over, and
it is,
and in private sector, in government, in military, really across the board, which is good news for you, and it's good news for the environment, and it's good news for everybody by the sound of it. Okay, right, Willian, thank you very much indeed for your time. That's been great, and yeah, we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.